Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you, Georgia.
Great. My name's Georgia, and I'm here with Sabrina.
Hi, Sabrina.
And we are here to present our project called Replaced. Hang on. This is just a quick overview. Can you, I always wonder this, can you guys, if I have this video screen, does content get blocked on your end behind it, or can you also see the tiles? You can see everything?
You can only see your presentation.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Okay, so I'm just going to run you through what we'd like to present. We're basically going to propose the design problem that we're trying to tackle and move through some precedents that we found inspiring and our proposed design concept and solution. I won't run through the new narratives theme as you guys just ran through it. But I would like to present the problem. So Toronto wants to demolish homeless tent cities. Can they really do that? COVID-19 spreads easily in crowded spaces, so when the virus arrived in Toronto's homeless shelters in March, a charity group responded by handing out tents. The idea was to give homeless people a way to practice physical distancing, potentially saving their lives. Soon after, tent cities started popping up everywhere. Despite the seemingly noble intent, the encampments appear to have created new dangers. After a man died in a fire at an encampment in May, Toronto Fire confiscated 100 liters of gasoline and 17 propane tanks from various tent cities. The sites have become filled with garbage, which leads to rats. There's no running water, which makes hand washing difficult. Drug trafficking is rampant, and many of the inhabitants aren't actually social distancing, which was the point of handing out tents. Some people who live near the encampments also say that they no longer feel safe. So, what can we do? As students, we were excited about the possibility and potential of designing a cheaper, safer, and better shelter. So this is just a summary of some of the latest headlines in the last week or so around Toronto's housing encampments, but some of the things that we would like to achieve with this design are to increase safety for people, reduce mortality, improve their living conditions, reduce flammability, increase accessibility, so make it kind of do it yourself, and reduce the cost of these shelters. Our opportunity. So the average garbage bag in Toronto contains 70 to 80% of recyclables, compostables, hazardous waste, e-waste, and condos in Toronto are also not obligated to recycle. We know that there is a tremendous amount of plastic waste in our plastic going into our waste that is going straight to landfill. So by collecting and recycling plastics into a new fabrication material, we have the opportunity to develop a solution to Toronto's encampment problem. Why recycled plastic? So plastic recycling is the process of collecting plastic waste, processing that material, and reforming it into useful products. Since the majority of plastic is non-biodegradable, lasting for hundreds of years, if not forever, recycling the material is part of global efforts to reduce the amount of plastics that end up in our waste system. Using recycled plastics is a viable alternative for a variety of building materials and helps reduce the some 8 million metric tons of waste plastic that enters the Earth's oceans yearly. Plastics, unlike other naturally derived building materials such as wood and stone, do not deteriorate over time or need to be replaced due to age. They can be refinished and reformed in cases of wear and tear or damage. And recycled plastic in its growing abundance is a resource that is easily manufactured and customizable. In our case, melted plastic offers the added benefit of being water/weatherproof. So some pros and cons. This is just to give you a little bit of an idea of what kind of plastics are out there that are going into our waste. There is thermoplastic resin and thermosetting resin. And to save time, I'll just run through thermoplastic resin, which is the kind of type of plastic that we would seek to use for this project. Because it is recyclable, there are lower VOCs. It melts when heated to higher temperatures. It's a bit weaker than thermosetting resin. It's easily accessible in things like shopping bags, plastic film, plastic water bottles, and acrylics. These plastics also have the opportunity to be strengthened with the introduction of secondary or tertiary additives. So products you might already know are things like Korean countertops, the brand 3form that produces a whole variety of surfaces, and Varia Eco Resin. fortifying these products adds value to the end product, as using virgin material is more expensive. So, some design precedents to show you that kind of inspired our thinking. The first is called the melting pot table, which is by a Dutch designer, Dirk van der Kooi. I'm going to probably not pronounce his last name correctly. It is 96% reclaimed synthetics. And we thought what was special about this is it is an effort to use a circular system of manufacturing. And it really kind of like, it reminds you of something marble, something that has a certain precious and valued quality. The second is a modular unit that was created by the group called Precious Plastics. You might have heard of this before. I would call them more of a platform and community of several people, machines that are combined to create a kind of open source alternative to global recycling. This brand offers.
Sorry?
Pardon?
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, this company is great because they are all about empowering people in communities to be able to do recycling projects to reuse this material in a way that's effective on a small scale, but also scalable on a large scale. So this is a great precedent for Georgia and I, knowing that if we want to work with plastics, how are we going to do that on a small scale to be able to prototype, and how can we scale that up? Also, when you think about precious, the whole concept of precious plastics being precious, what's more precious than people's shelter? So this kind of connection between plastics being a precious material and also shelter being extremely precious. So that relationship there.
Yeah. So they've developed these open source like bricks that you can download a mold for this and build it yourself and basically practice plastic extruding or pouring. So that you can create these modular units that allow you to build a wall or a structure of your choice. And the last precedent we wanted to share is called Hester Van Dyke's Pretty Plastic. And this is a cladding material that gives discarded building products a second life. Okay. Nasila, is that the 7-minute mark?
Yes.
Okay.
So you still have 30 minutes.
Okay, great. So these tiles are made out of window frames, downspouts, and rain gutters. They're kind of like a multitude of materials, but they are actually strong enough to become a cladding system for roofing or exterior cladding. And while we aren't sure yet if we will explore aggregate, this is something that we thought would inform our design going forward. And I will hand it to Sabrina to talk about the proposed solution.
So Georgia and I knew that from the get-go, we wanted to do something that reframed the context of what it means to be homeless in a way that changes the typology we all know what tent city is. But then also above its civic value, we wanted something that also had an environmental impact that was going to be low cost. And what's more low cost than free materials or materials that are going to go to waste? So we wanted to design this concept of creating a tile that could be a singular unit that can be used as something, a tabletop or a surface to sleep on, or when multiples are put together, can be created to build a shelter that redefines the concept of tent in the homeless city. And it also becomes something that you can then expand on to grow and create a shelter or a community that becomes really beautiful from the outside, but really effective from the inside. So this idea of going from an HDPE plastic, which is things like laundry bottles and stuff like that, melting it down to create a tile. And then this tile can be repeated in some sort of attachment system to create a different shelter.
I don't know if you want to read this, up to you.
So homeless housing in Toronto has been stamped as cold, unsafe, undesirable, dangerous, and we propose a new vision for Toronto's tent cities. Replaced is a shelter typology that offers a paradigm of transitional housing to Toronto's homeless using recycled plastics. Replaced is a shelter in a kit system that can be given to a person in need. The new form will require no tools, single-use parts, and can be assembled and disassembled by 1 or 2 people on their own, building an idea of incremental housing. The modular part will contain a cavity in which the insulation can be packed by the end user. Conceptually, this project aims to reverse the image of homelessness by transforming Toronto's tent cities into joyous, colorful, and cared for communities through temporary Though temporary, we want to offer a short-term dwelling that a person can take pride in while also reducing the environmental footprint. Too often, people adopt an out of sight, out of mind approach when it comes to homelessness and environmentalism. Replaced is a reversal that forces the compassionate care and refuses to be ignored. So this just talks about an example of how we would cleat these tiles together using essentially a French cleat system. So one of these objects, we create a mold, the plastic would be melted, poured into this mold. The French cleat would then be something that was pressed into this or part of the mold already. And then you could repeat this process over and over again, be it in a workshop, in a manufacturing setting or otherwise. And then the interior of the tile could then be stuffed with things like newspaper or old denim waste or even like other plastics to create an insulated series that would improve the quality inside of a shelter.
So our possible outcomes could include, and I think this will depend on our access to some tools, is either a digital render and scale model, either we fabricate several units to test how they come together, and or if we have that much success with it and a simple mold, then we can fabricate a full structure and install that somewhere in the city of Toronto.
This is just a projected budget of and the mold making of what we needed within the allotment that you guys gave, which was $350, which is very doable for this project. So
yeah, the nice part about this is a lot of the materials are reclaimed, so they should have no cost. And this is just a kind of finished collage that gives an indication of the kind of like colorful sense of like joy and attention that we would actually like to bring to these encampment spaces. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam?
Yeah, the age.
No, it's not. No.
Age before beauty, absolutely. Or
No.
Before,
professors first.
No, age before brain. But anyway, few things. One thing is, what really attracts me most, that is the concept of the scales, which is like an armor, which is protection. So when I think about the scales, armor, protection, I can see, oh, this is the philosophy behind. I think that, are you planning, do you have a technology yourself to create it, or you have to actually go somewhere and spend a lot of money to create those scales?
I think Georgia works in mold making, so she can attest to what it's like to create a mold from scratch. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of fabrication experience. So I think together it would be a series of creating a prototype mold just on a small scale, either in one of our houses or if we have access to the Creative Technology Lab in the coming year. It would be on us to develop this sort of mold making process for the point of this project. So small scale.
Do you think in the future it will be created by the homeless themselves, or it will be always us or you helping them, like a community helping them? How would you think? I
think we would see the community being able to kind of like make these modular units at home, or purchase some like a mold kit so that they can repurpose their own plastic and then just hand out these kind of units to people. But the only part that is sort of assemblable by an individual person without a home would be like the insulation itself and then just assembling it together.
Yeah, I think that the scale as such, it's a small element, but actually it allows for the structural rigidity of the whole thing, depending the geometry of it. Right now, one thing which I'm not quite sure what it is. You have still a very traditional home-like structure, which is not very practical, right, for somebody to move through. And you have those white surfaces. I don't know what they are. What type of a material?
Okay, I think the concept was just we're still working through ideas of what this would come to be in shape, as a shape, the structure. So we're just suggesting that it could be modular. Like maybe it comes together to look more like a teepee typology, or maybe it is a traditional tent typology, or maybe it comes together to clad over top of something else. We're still working out what that becomes depending on what the joint looks like between the tiles. So it was just an example to show how iterative a single versus many could be. Yeah,
because I think that actually probably the scale itself can create the whole structure. And you can go for the more complex geometric shapes, which means that if the people are actually creating it themselves at one point in the future, they can give some personal touch to it. Am I right? I've got this thing here and I have this thing here. So we'll feel more at home because they will be not standardized. The only standardized element will be actually their scale as such. Thank you.
Yeah.
I could go. So kind of piggybacking on Adam's notion of scale, very right in the sense, you know, like the smaller you go, the more adaptability you have in terms of shape, form, and, you know, structural integrity, I guess, you know, depending on how it's actually built or designed in terms of the joinery. You know, and kind of to step back a bit, I think addressing this problem is very unique. You know, biking around the city, you see tents pop up in parks and whatnot, you know, and actually some people might look at it and be like, well, why are there tents in a park? You know, why are there homeless people here? But it's like, you know, they need a place to be. So taking that direction and kind of revisiting this idea of, you know, what could there be instead of just tents? I think that's an amazing kind of gesture. My biggest comment, and I don't know if it's possible to go back on to a slide on this, but it's the slide before the collage. I think it showed some things. Is it possible to go back to a slide on this?
Yeah, let me try. Hang on. Which slide? Okay, so it was before the collage.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been either the budget or the kind of like possible installation outcomes, or
either or. I can't remember exactly.
Sure, hang on, I'll share.
But essentially,
this it?
Yes.
Okay.
So in terms of like, so this is kind of where it hit me. It's like the scale, though aesthetically, I feel like there's a lot of possibilities. I feel like from a utilitarian standpoint, from a functional standpoint, you know, if this were to be given to a person as a kit of parts or a package, I feel like assembling this would require quite some teamwork for that one individual. You know, it could be a project for them. So my main kind of concern would be to potentially explore a larger format tile, which, you know, on the real site, someone who's laying down tiles is always happier if it's 4x4 tiles as opposed to a 1x1 tile, because you cover more area faster. So that would be kind of my comment regarding the scale. Other than that, I'm curious about the manufacturing process. I think it mentioned oven, I think on the budget page. But I'm curious about what that process is and whether that process in itself, but based on your backgrounds and your experience with kind of thermoforming, it seems like you cover what that process exactly is like in terms of its own sustainability concerns.
Yeah, I think the process of making it can be done simply like using your oven. You just need a heat source where you like shred the plastic that is meltable, and it just has to get to a point that it's malleable enough. It doesn't have to be completely like molten or liquid. And then you essentially push those into a mold, and using heat gloves, you can like push the plastics into the mold of your desired shape. And then it's just a process of letting it cool from there. And yeah, through the Creative Technology Lab, Georgia and I both, she does a lot of mold making and I do a lot of manufacturing, and we have essentially like a plastic grinder that I fundraised for that is exactly for this purpose. So you can get pellets down to a really small size, which means you get a more even mold or more even pour per se of the material. Think about 3D printing. It's that sort of same sort of context, but using recycled plastics instead of like virgin materials.
Cool. Yeah, I think that would be it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm sorry my background noise is a lot, but I hope you can hear me well. Really great job. I love seeing your work. I've seen so much in the last few years around sustainability, and I'm really confident that you guys can actually build at least some scale models for this. And based on the timeline, I'm not sure how it'll work for the final full-scale model, but I think one thing that could happen is a very small, like interactive puzzle piece kind of thing that could be placed somewhere. I don't know how well that would work in a public setting right now with people interacting with those pieces, but that could be an idea that could be done in the next few months. That would really be great as an interactive piece. And I would encourage you guys to contact Professor Feliz Classen for IRN 800. She's actually doing Building with Waste this year. I'm not going to be in her studio, but definitely contact her as she's exploring this with her fourth years next semester. So that would be more engaging conversations with her as well. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all for your comments. They're much appreciated.
Oh, I had one more thing. Have you guys thought about how you are collecting all of these materials?
Yeah, it's something we talked about, and Georgia was like, okay, we're just gonna have to ask all of our friends and family to start giving us their rinsed plastic, and then we have to figure out where we're gonna store it. The dream scenario would be that we would just essentially do that. We would go to people who live in condo buildings and ask them to ask their neighbors to collect these, essentially we'll give them examples of kinds of plastic and then just make sure that the plastic symbol matches what we're going for. But it'll ultimately depend on what the forecast for the socioeconomic situation in Toronto is going to look like, because I think it'll depend on how much plastic we can actually collect and how comfortable we are getting things from other people, and how quickly we can do that moving forward. But
I do have one advantage. My mom is chair of the board of the small apartment condo that she is in, so she can ask the tenants to keep this in mind. They do a little bit of private recycling, so I think those people would be interested in diverting it to another source.
Yeah. But otherwise, no, we're just gonna grassroots it.
So one recommendation, I guess, and I don't know how we're doing for time, is you could reach out to kind of more industrial manufacturers and see if they have shavings from anything that they manufacture. People who make bottles, all that. There's the final product always has, not ideal, but always has some kind of waste to it. So a friend of mine in India, for instance, he goes to people who carve stone out of quarries and uses the dust, recycled dust, to create new products. So I have a feeling a similar approach could be helpful here.
Thank you so much. Very helpful.
Since everybody's trying for a second, I'm still thinking about the geometry. I really think that it would be wonderful, because I would gladly drive by the lakeshore and see something which I actually envy. The envy of many of those people are homeless because they cannot live within the Cartesian geometry of the society. So if you can go with this material and with this small element, and if you can just go as organic as possible in a sense of actually breaking with any defined geometries, that would be wonderful, because I really want the society to start envy the people who in many cases actually opted for this very strange, terrible, but freedom.
Yeah, I think the shape is something we're working on. We just tried to compromise between what's something that's going to read as a tile that's a layerable unit for the sake of the presentation. We definitely want to do more prototyping about what's going to be the best shape, and the best, something that's going to create the best iterative final piece, because we know that we want it to be something that becomes beautiful and becomes part of the Toronto typology. That was something we talked about. So yes, 100%, Adam, I agree with you.
We still have 4 minutes for the panelists.
So much time, I feel
I have a quick question. So you're talking about adding a layer of insulation on the inside. Do you have any ideas of how you're going to connect that layer of insulation to the tiles?
we weren't planning to sort of prefabricate insulation. You know, I think we could explore that as an option, as like a fully inclusive package, but I think it might be easier for those once the structure has been installed, to pack it once it has been like let's say this is like a typical wall cavity, then they can pack it to a place that is actually sufficient. Yeah, I think it will, like, there are several variables that we're still exploring based on its form and how thick we can make that cavity, depending on how it looks, and also to make this like really easily operable for people. Some of the other research that I've done since this presentation was drafted is along the lines of Japanese joinery, where it kind of has these like angular insertion points, so they're really simple to slide together. Yeah, like yeah, we have quite a few variables. I'm sorry if I can't answer the question right away.
No, that's great. So you're planning on doing a cavity inside the tiles that people can just fill with their own materials. Gotcha.
The principle is based on a project in, I believe, Chile, where an architect basically built half a house, knowing that the tenants would come in and build the remainder of the house when they were financially able to do so. And I think that, you know, a lot of people in dire situations are not useless people. You know, they just need a kind of a beginning to get started. And that's sort of the way we saw this project going.
I think, sorry to add to that, I think that was the Alejandro Aravena project, right?
Yeah.
And the architect also gave the prospective residents an option to choose between, you know, whether they wanted a shower or a heater or something like that. So to open, you know, even to not say, okay, you must fill it in with this, to just leave room for flexibility, to give them the option of what they can potentially fill it with in terms of insulation. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I think it's this whole idea of barrier to entry, like where do you set the bar so that people always feel like it's accessible. And I know that, I think George and I both being mature students, we have this idea of what life looks like before when you work and have money, and now as a student when you have to kind of give up some of your freedoms. So I think even just like that perspective, knowing that like there's so many things that we want to do with our time that we're always like, oh, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do this. So I know that informs so many of our decisions about like where the barrier to entry line should be. Like it should be as accessible as possible. If we're trying to make this like as minimally invasive financially as it can possibly be, but then also support a good civic environment that creates a better like micro community for people who are having a hard time or can't get secure shelter.
So just to note that the panelist is up, and at this moment we will have 5 minutes opportunity for questions from audience, for the audience to move to another breakout room, or to have a quick break while the next group will be setting up. So if the audience has something to say to for.m.atter, please go ahead. And if not, then I want to say I just really liked your project. It's an amazing project, and I just have I guess a suggestion for you guys and for those tiles. Maybe the extent of these tiles go beyond just being a shelter and actually become sort of a puzzle for the people to use inside the shelter. So maybe they can become a small stool or something like that. That's maybe something to consider. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I think the more flexible, the more modular this system becomes, the more potential it has. It doesn't necessarily have to be just a shelter. Yeah.
So at this time, the next group can start setting up.
So good evening, and thank you to our panelists and our fellow installation teams for joining us today. My name is Paul Lee.
And my name is Yihanna Sun.
And together we are Studio Point 2, here to present our installation proposal called Two Tides for 3D New Narratives.
To begin, our concept is, in the most basic terms, alleyway activation, and the social landscapes and perspectives towards using the leftover spaces of alleyways and nooks and crannies will be redefined in the post-pandemic world as strategic uses of these unused spaces become a topic of discussion. We already see this beginning to happen as restaurants revitalize and use their alleyways as patios for outdoor dining, some even taking over the streets. And so like alleyways are often plagued with and could be a host for casual outdoor meeting spots, an individual's leisure spot, or a defining geotag/landmark over time. The rising concern with strategically using these leftover spaces comes with trying to one's homes. Our goal with our alleyway intervention is to make a point that this mindset is applicable to any outdoor leftover space, especially in less developed regions, to become more fruitful and inviting. Using the alleyway behind RSID, we're proposing a ribbon-like intervention that promotes a one-way circulation tunnel with segregated opportunities to rest in between. The designated one-way tunnel is for navigating COVID or post-COVID once students return to campus. And so the opportunities along the way to stop and rest if desired, and the individual's exclusive experience by social distancing paced between the patrons. Walking through the warping tunnel offers an ease from pandemic anxieties by removing the chance of bumping into others head on. To keep the states socially distanced, the ribbons will be spaced out by increments of 2 meters, and the tunnel should encompass a fluidity thanks to the ribbon-like wood that helps towards denoting its path of direction. The enter openings of the tunnels will be larger than the exit openings, probably 4 meters in height versus 3 meters or 2.5 meters respectively, so that the one-way direction of the tunnel is distinguished and self-explanatory as possible. Moving on to our desired site, we wanted a space that's familiar amongst those who would have attended the year-end show despite it being digital. And so we chose the closest alleyway to RSID, located at the west exits of the Daphne Coxwell complex, which is obviously in close proximity of RSID. In order to not block any important docking areas or exits, the stretch of our installation area and ends just south of their emergency fire exits. The overall dimensions are 5 and 3/4 of a meter by 30 meters. This slide better contextualizes areas that should not be blocked by our installation, DCC, and the south side loading dock of the DCC. All right, and moving onwards, Paul will take it from here.
Thank you, Yihanna. Now we'll be going over some initial sketches of our installation. So ergonomically, the entrances would span between 1.5 meters and 2.5 meters in width to comfortably fit 2 people side by side. Along with being wheelchair accessible, the heights of the passages would vary again between 4 meters and 2.5 meters respectively, from entry to exit points of the passage. We also plan to raise the center portion between the passages to be 18 inches in height above ground, to be an optimal seating height for those waiting to access buildings. Rather than having one continuous closed off passage, we'll aim to have a series of arching thresholds so those who pass through see surrounding light at all times of day. And the seating portion of our installation would be accessible throughout the 30-meter stretch that it occupies. Now for our model, we primarily worked on Rhino to create this southern view. Shows the view facing towards the backdoor entrance from RSID. And in both south and north elevations, the user would enter through the right side, as most pedestrians stick to the right. This east elevation shows the stretch of the 30-meter passage and the subtle taper from entry to exit passage and vice versa. Lastly, this 3D view best shows the overall intervention to the alleyway west of RSID and the DCC. So this is in an axometric perspective. And then we also created some renders kind of showing the side from the Arsid exit towards Daphne Coxwell. So again, you have the perspective and then the opposing perspective as well. Now to address our 3D build, due to our proposed site being at an extremely large scale, we've planned to construct at a 1:50 scale and minimize waste. Our resulting model will be about 11.5 centimeters by 60 centimeters in length and width, and primarily built out of upcycled wood. Our resulting submission would be a scale model documented through both photograph and video as well. As for method and materials, our goal for our materials of the building is to be as sustainable as possible and work with only recyclables, such as wood aside from adhesives. Our primary purchase cost would be for bendable plywood, along with potentially purchasing plywood board if we're unable to upcycle leftover material upon inquiry with Carol at Arsid. And for surrounding building contexts, we would plan to laser cut 1/8" plywood. We'd also hope to 3D print some figures in order to emphasize scale within the installation, as well as surrounding building context. And that is a wrap for Studio Point 2. Thank you so much for listening to a proposal for 3D new narratives.
Okay. If I may, it's the concept of stitching the space. It's actually quite nice. Because you know that the capitalism has divided our city into little blocks, and you have those dead spaces in between. So I think the concept of stitching the space is good. It's like your sample of the structure, which is actually touching the adjacent buildings, actually good. It's probably actually better than having isolated furniture, like a street furniture element right now. So even if you are not touching physically the buildings, which they might not like, then I think it's a good idea to actually allow them to touch. So it means that you are connecting the spaces rather than just creating yet another street furniture. I think the light should be a very important element of it because it's like it will be working for, you know, it's a, no, sunset is at 4 p.m. and whatever, am I right? And the people still want to be there. Oh, well, maybe not, maybe it's too cold. But the element of the light is somehow permanent element of this one, not only just like a strip lighting on the edge, but maybe the whole thing can glow or not. And I think that scale, if you're building the model, I suggest 1:25, sorry about that, rather than 1:100. 1:100 is really nothing with this size of the thing. So 1:25 is like a traditional use model for the theater models and for the architectural models, Michelangelo and whatever, because this gives you the actually sense of how it will feel like. 1:100 is too small, and yeah, so this is all for now. And yeah, and I think that your budget is a little too low. Like it's really just, it's nice, but I don't think it's realistic. Anyway, thank you.
I guess I can go next. I have similar comments as Adam. For budget, I would consider looking at that again and definitely talking to Carol in the workshop for that. And you guys are only planning on making a model, right? Of the project?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also schedule for that as well, even though it's a small model, it still tends to take a lot of time getting all of that together, especially with delivery and where you guys will be getting together to construct this. And then for materials, we do have a lot of cardboard saved up from last year that you can also add on to, so that at least the wood can just be the finishing item, and then you can have a lot of cardboard just for low budget and just reusing what we already have in the building. So I would look at that as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed your concept, and just movement is really important, and I'm glad you guys are engaging with that.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, really love the idea of using the alleys, you know, always walking through those alleys has been kind of this gritty experience, you know, no matter what time of day, you're just like, do I need to be walking through these kind of thing? But I really love the idea of movement. I think taking into consideration the one-way flow is amazing, especially expressing it through the taper is a really cool move. To kind of go back to what Swetha just asked, you guys are building the model, and I'm wondering, like, is this something that's going to be proposed to the school after? Is that the idea?
We were running based off of the assumption that like it would be feasible and like proposable. I don't think we actually like talked about if we would ever actually.
Okay, so I mean, if you are planning, or if that is something that you would be potentially submitting as a proposal for the alley, I would take into consideration, and I haven't looked into this, but the potential use of the alleyway as a fire truck laneway as well, because a lot of times, and this has kind of been the big concern in terms of alleyways and developing alleyways, is the width and the kind of circulation of fire trucks through these things to be able to access all the areas. So that's a potential consideration to take into account. But definitely from a concept standpoint, I love it. Love the illustrations. I would suggest, if possible, to not print the 3D or 3D print the little people for scale. I think there's many other more sustainable ways to go about it as well.
For sure, yeah.
Just very minor, but really love the idea.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lorella actually made a comment in the chat saying it's a nice proposal for the university to consider.
Oh, thank you, Lorella.
Oh, thank you, Lorella.
So I guess if none of the panelists have any other comments, this concludes our 3D presentations. After our 15-minute break, we will move to our 2D presentations. So at this moment, we can take questions from the audience, or for you to get a glass of water and take a quick break. We will begin again at 6:30. Since we are actually running a little early, so it's going to be a 30-minute break.
Or we can give Paul and Yihanna more tough.
Sounds good.
Tough, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're trying to be gentle, but you know what? It's actually they can take it. You know what? So it's.
For you can take it. Yeah.
We can take it. Also, thank you for your initial comments, the panelists, everyone. Yeah. All right, bring it on.
I think it's, you know what, yeah, it's also, I think that probably because everything is Cartesian again. So, and you have a chance, of course, the seatings, the relatively small pieces of the seatings, they can be horizontal, but then you are going diagonally. And instead of going again horizontal, you can just have it diagonally. So it's like a strange creature which almost hangs from the adjacent buildings. Okay, so it's so it's more like it's the philosophy should be that you are trying to connect something which is separated. So it's not the convenience of the people and students reading and, you know, doing whatever they are doing and kissing each other, which is actually very common, you know, it's like it's actually very healthy habit. But I think it's just also for that to tell them, okay, we are all connected. We are connecting those two actually quite sad vertical facades. So it's whatever you can do to connect those, that will be actually quite good. And again, and if Professor Di Cintio is right, and the university will purchase it and spend 150,000 or well, okay, 240,000 on this on this device, then of course it can also go into the pavement, am I right? So there's some elements are going into the pavement, flush with the pavement. So you have the elements of the light, and this one can be glowing element. It actually creates very, very interesting, almost ethereal lit environment. So you are creating an environment. You are not creating because we have many unsuccessful street furniture, examples, but this one is actually creating the environment and the symbolic representation of what should be done with the city to reconnect it.
Adding on to the seating, the way you guys have shown it, you just have individual pieces. So I would think about increasing those spaces, or at least the backs of one, like how people are facing each other instead of everyone facing forward the way you guys have it. Just so there's like a rotating piece for more conversation. Just encouraging different ways of for the orientation, as opposed to what you guys have right now, even if they are socially distanced.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Is it possible to see your rendering again?
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question.
Thanks, Georgia.
Did you guys consider any other locations for this installation, or was it just this particular alley? Because I think this particular alley proposes like many challenges. It's a really important material drop-off space for both the Creative Technology Lab and the back of our workshop. And those windows that are in this image actually look down into the high bay within the Creative Technology Lab, which is like one of the only sources of natural light that they do have.
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered if you, like, I don't see it being a particularly, like a great location for this. While I'm really excited by the form and the like spatial gesture that you've created, I think it has a real sense of atmosphere. Yeah, I just wondered if there was another location that you thought about.
Yeah, we actually, we took these photos of the buildings ourselves. We went to campus a little while back to kind of take measurements and see the alleyways. I think the ones we were mainly considering was this one, and then also kind of forgetting the name of the street, but by the Tim Hortons and the campus store. I know that they've newly paved that area as well, so it's all evenly leveled. Yeah.
Really, I think this type of installation, or what the mindset behind this, is applicable to many other alleyways around RSID. Not RSID, but Ryerson. Especially the ones where I feel aren't as well lit, especially at nighttime, and that we still take as our path to the TTC. Right. So it's just actually finding the designated alleyway that we'd like to have this proposed for. We actually just chose this one by the DCC because of its familiarity with people who would have attended year-end show, which is why we wanted that, the relativity. But just after we have found a designated alleyway, we actually would, custom fit or adjust it according to the site regarding to whichever alleyway is chosen.
I actually I wonder what it would be like in the quad in Kerr Hall as a circle. I think that would be interesting, but I think you're right that it has many different application potentials.
If I may, stylistically also, I think it doesn't look well, because we have it's a homogeneous sort of a material and the language, visual language, except those little boxes supporting it where the seatings are. In this case, I suggest that you have your strip, and you are splitting the strip. One goes all the way to the ground and back, and the other one creates the seating. So it's the same language rather than introducing all of a sudden oops, it's not structurally enough. Let me support it by the box, which has totally different geometry, and it's actually boring.
Okay.
Right.
Am I still too gentle, or you want me to, adjust my little knob?
No, that's great. Yeah.
No, it's good. Keep it coming.
I don't know how we're doing on time, but I think, and from what I recall, last time I went to campus, Gould Street, I think the sidewalks are wider on Gould. Are they?
On Gould?
along Kerr Hall, like, is the sidewalk any wider now, or am I just making stuff up?
They're actually renovating it.
They're actually done, but I can't remember. We were there not too long ago.
Because I'm thinking, you know, even so, I think whenever I was in school, in our last year, we actually built a pavilion for Gould Street with Professor Furman, and you know, the school okayed having it on the pavement, bolted into the asphalt, and it was there for at least a year, maybe a few months. So, you know, this idea, I mean, kind of going along what was said earlier, it does not limit itself to alleyways. It can actually be implemented and deployed on a potentially, you know, a sidewalk that's maybe that wide or maybe gets compressed, but it definitely could go even on a more prominent street where there's a lot of circulation. So you have kind of this controlled walking along the sidewalk, but then these opportunities to be seated as well in between.
I actually think that space would actually make a lot of sense because I think just in the last few months they finished constructing Gould Street. They repaved it so that some areas like are level with the sidewalk, so that like students, like it's meant to be walked in rather than drived on now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think Lorella just said that. That's
right. You have also, you know, strong well, the history, you know, all the Italian arcade along the street, giving the sense of the community, and Leonardo da Vinci's, you know, his pedestrian streets above something else. It's like this is you have a good many of good colleagues who died long ago, who introduced this element of just how to connecting the streets, connecting the important buildings, and giving the people the sense of safety actually as well. Am I right? It's a psychologically very important element which we are lacking in Toronto.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Can you like elaborate on how you're proposing to talk about sustainability or incorporate sustainability into this project?
In terms of the materiality, I guess we would reconsider using cardboard because we are making it as a scaled model instead. And actually using cardboard, if we actually just remove one side of it, it makes it much more pliable, bendable in the ways that we want it. And then, so that already would reduce a lot of, or at least like make our project more sustainable already from what it's already being proposed as. And so that's what I have so far. Paul?
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, no, I think the suggestion to use cardboard that Swetha mentioned in replacement of like the bendable ply would actually make a lot of sense in terms of like the language of fluidity and the geometry within our scale. And as Professor Adam mentioned, if we were to build in a 1:25 scale, like kind of like theater scale, the overall length would only be about 1.2 meters. So it would still be relatively small, and I don't think we'd end up using a ton of material either with the cardboard.
Have you guys considered at all what you would use for the, if you did go ahead with a full scale model? Have you considered materials for that?
It would most likely be molded ply, but in local construction sites to see if we could use the wood that they were otherwise like planning on recycling. And so we just have to find a lot of different construction sites around the city.
They're not in short supply here, that's for sure, but thank you, that's great.
How easy was it to find people with masks on for the render?
It took me 3 hours to find people.
I told him to just find regular people and to just Photoshop the masks on, but he was like, no, I will find it.
And I was like looking at stock photos and they were like $700. So
And I was wondering, like, okay, if the mask is photoshopped on, it's done pretty well. Like,
if all critiques are done, then we will be taking a 15-minute break. So if the audience wants to move to another room, please send it in the chat and it will be done. And for our panelists and our presenters, take a break in for 15 minutes and we will meet again at 6:30.
thank you.
Once again, thank you, Adam, Rudra, Swetha. Thank you.
We have a new panelist joining us. The new panelist is Sonali. Welcome. And so we have, the second half is going to be all about the 2D groups. And the first group is going to be RE.
Hello, my name is Rebecca, and I will be presenting my installation called You. So even in our break, we were actually kind of talking about the concept that I was going for this installation, and it's really the idea of finding yourself and like using the and being able to give new purpose and beginnings to materials and objects. And the key point or the key theme that I wanted to go for was the idea of you, as you are the ones that are creating, building, and guiding these new beginnings and opportunities. And so some of the precedents that I've come across are both with artists that use the words and letters to captivate the viewers and allow an interaction with the piece. The installation, both the installations are very simple, clear, and neat, yet they're intricate with all the little details, such as the spacing in between each letter and the placements, all aspects that I wanted to consider in my installation. And so therefore, from these two artists, I got the inspiration of creating a piece that serves a purpose much like a word search. And so I started off my brainstorming by using a mind map that really connected with the prompt that we were given, and also combining my concepts of searching for yourself and searching for new narratives for materials. And so once again, I really wanted to highlight the idea of you, as you are the ones that are making these changes and these decisions, and without you or the viewer making those developments, it's not possible. And so for the design, this is just an elevation of what it would look like together as a piece. I considered both the precedents and my concepts, and I decided to lay out each layer equally spaced. And I've hidden some of the words, some of the terms that I brainstormed, such as perspective, change, and future. Not sure if you can see it yet, but I also wanted that to be an ability to have the viewers interact with the piece and allowing them to spot and find their word. And I have also opened up some blank spaces here and there to make it feel less dense. And additionally, I have made the focal points as you again, as you to once again emphasize the fact that you are the ones taking the step. And I wanted that to be the very first word that a viewer would see, so that the next word or the next term that they would see would be a buildup of that word. And also to emphasize more of a focal point, I decided to have a little window to symbolize a framework, and also to use a material like a mirror to kind of reflect each of the sides in the words and reflect the viewer who is actually looking at the mirror. And for some minor details that I've considered for this installation is definitely the measurements will change depending on where the space would be, but I wanted to have it where one side was larger than the other to get that asymmetrical feel to it. And I wanted to incorporate the idea of giving new purpose and reusing materials. So each letter would be either a different material that was either reused, such as newspaper, fabric, or cardboard. And so this is a final like mock-up or rendering of how it would look like in a space with the corner. I really wanted to incorporate the corner to kind of using the window and the mirror to kind of reflect all sides of the installation. And once again, coming back to some of the materials, for the letterings, definitely I wanted to put a base layer as either like a wood of a plywood or lumber, and then having to layer a recyclable or reusable material on top to kind of cover up and give it some form of dimension, but also not giving it too much depth. And also I would incorporate using the mirror as a non-recyclable, but the other ones would all be recyclable. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
I could go. I have a few questions, actually. So just to clarify, where would this be experienced?
I kind of just wanted, I haven't really picked out the actual location, but I definitely wanted to be like in a corner of a space to get that full feeling of the mirror reflecting the words and the letterings. Yeah, I'm not sure, but definitely maybe like a closed space or like a little room. Yeah, that's still a working process.
Gotcha. I'll let the others go ahead. I'm still digesting.
Where's, you know what, I didn't get it at all, but I like it. So but what about the mirror? Where's the mirror? What's the importance of the mirror?
I just wanted the viewer to kind of know that they are like of importance so if a viewer would be standing in that position, they would know their importance.
But,
so, yeah.
But the wall is, let's say there is a corner, it's like a cyclorama or whatever, it's like a cyclorama. And then the mirror, the wall is actually mirror, or the letters are mirror?
Just the arced there's like an arced window that I framed, and that would be the mirror, and the letters would be on top of the mirror. Here, I could go back to actually my
Please, thank you.
Yeah.
We have plenty of time because your presentation was very short.
Yeah. So, oops, wait. Yep, so this, could you see my mouse?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so this area would be where like the mirror would be, and any of the letterings that are placed on like where the area the mirror is, it would actually be on top of the mirror.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, the letters, can I reposition the letters? Can I steal one letter and take home? Or the people actually bringing the letters and placing them there? Like, is the static, yeah, is it a static situation, or the letters, are the letters, it's like an active matrix screen where the letters are appearing, or it's like a, you know, yeah, so is it static?
Yeah, they're all like stuck onto the wall, and they're actually hidden words or terms that relate to the prompt that we were given, and they're hidden in it as if it was very similar to a word search, to kind of give the viewer an interaction to find a word that like kind of like envision them for their next step.
Yeah, that's too complex for me, this aspect, but so there is no interaction. Let's say I'm entering the space and what's happening there. I see what I see right now, and then what am I forcing my brain to do?
Basically finding like terms within those words. So in the in this like installation or like panel part, there are like just random letters, and then there are actual like terms or words in the layout.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does it help if you I always have a problem with 2D, but you are actually getting, it's like a 3D actually installation. You can actually have two corners. So the whole thing will be like almost a theater when you're actually employing the two corners. So it's like a 360 degrees almost environment. And maybe, because it doesn't look good if the window is cut through by the corner of the room. Corner works almost against it. But if you can either make it curve, the corner, or maybe the window is actually traveling. Is it possible that the window is actually connected to the top and the bottom? You have like a guiding elements there, and the window actually moves. It's almost like a magnifying glass. Mm-hmm. So whenever I find the word which is interesting, the window actually helps me to do that. And maybe it is the mirror till I stop moving it. So when I'm moving it, I see my face, or maybe it's like a double, like a two-way mirror or so. And then at one point when I stop, this stops being a mirror and just it's like a window into the word which is important to me. Just to give some chance for the interaction between somebody and the space. Otherwise, it's very passive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, of course, it should be probably a little higher, because right now it's good for my dog, that I don't have, but it's a little too low, am I right? So it should start higher, maybe like 2 feet off the ground, because right now you're just starting like 8 inches or 10 inches off the ground, right? So it's a little higher. And okay, sorry about that.
No, because definitely I kind of just had the purpose of the mirror to kind of bring focus to the word you. Because again, my main concept was the term you. So I just wanted, once you walk into the room, I wanted that be the first like term or word you would see. And then the words or the terms after would kind of like come back to the identification of you.
Yeah, but we have to be careful because it's, I visited my optometrist just recently, and this is exactly what he presented to me. So you have to be, you have to somehow think, okay, well, how can I, what can be done? Can I actually change? I have ability to move one letter and place it somewhere else, which will give me the word I'm looking for. And then I'm moving the window, or this is my choice, thank you very much. Now the next person and the next person and the next person. So it's just some chance of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Definitely. Yes, thank you.
I guess I'm the last panelist, correct? I'll jump in. Okay. Right. The immediate things that came to mind, it's sort of riffing off some things that Rudra and Professor Adam has already mentioned, but since your installation is a 2D installation, this is deviating from what you presented, but still in some ways aligned. I was wondering, these are just questions I'm posing to you. So making this dynamic, as Adam said, because it's always nice to take the viewer on some sort of a journey. So rather than presenting them with absolutely everything in one go, tease it and sort of take them on a journey and reveal and hide things. So what came to mind when I thought of that was, rather than having the letters be static on the wall, a couple of things were, what if these letters are projected? Adam sort of mentioned that. So what if they were projected? What if you could change the letters? What if you could, make this a little more dynamic, so that if someone is spending 10 minutes in the space, they're walking through this journey with you, it's interactive, and it'll make them, it'll arrest them in the space. It'll make them want to spend more time here, wherever this may be located. I also thought, what if, I know that you wanted, the mirror is so that it sort of highlights the word you, but what I was wondering is, what if some of these letters were mirrors and they said the word you, and they're kind of scattered all over the place, but you're applying projections selectively on certain letters. So some are reflective, some are the mirror that will catch the light in a certain way. But then you're applying projections selectively on other letters. So you're creating this kind of ever-changing dynamic situation that's creating reflections on the adjacent walls, while highlighting the you, the word you, and creating, giving, I guess, an audience the ability to walk up to something to see their own reflection, but rather than it being this very obvious, you know, arced mirror, it's these sort of glimpses of themselves. So not only are they seeing themselves in different light, but they're seeing, yeah, sort of glimpses of their own reflection as they move through the space. So those are my 2 cents.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump off of the projection idea, essentially thinking the same thing. I think it kind of actually takes this concept a little bit more back to installation categories. I know we were just talking about defining rules and whatnot, so I don't really want to push for that. But I think definitely the projection or the more digital aspect of it opens up a lot more ethereal kind of feeling to it. I agree where, you know, bringing the letters to life, you know, whether removing the staticness, so like, you know, let's say if it was a dark 2 walls and white text to kind of just inverse this graphic, right? White text pops up, slowly fades in, fades out. That even gives you the opportunity to kind of emphasize certain text that you want to create your narrative with, what you want to show the viewer, you as in Rebecca, what you want to show the audience, right? I think just bringing in this kind of going down the digital realm allows you to play around a little bit with what the narrative of this is. And a thought regarding emphasizing you. I really like the idea of the window, kind of like what Adam said, you know, letting the corner be what it is helps the corner do its job, right? So if the window were to shift off to one side, and that kind of made me think, you know, what if, you know, in the museum world, like selfie spots are a huge thing, and, you know, the whole Instagram world, what if you didn't need you there so explicitly? What if the window was a negative space where there is no text, and you have the opportunity, you the physical you, has the opportunity to go in there and it frames you.
Right.
As a part of.
I was kind of going for like that kind of like a very like interactive where like people could take photos and like having them like post them on Instagram, because now everyone's like doing that. I was thinking that, but now like adding like the mirror kind of also like contrasts to what I was going for. But yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's very like a different, I guess, a separate way of going around the how do you put yourself in this experience, right? So that would be my 2 cents.
Sorry, a note that 5 minutes are left for the panelists.
Well, the idea of mirrors, that's super interesting. I worked on something like that a couple of years ago as well. But for installations, the challenge is even working with mirrors and cutting them and creating different shapes. So we actually ended up using reflective mylar instead. So that's like a foil or a wallpaper type. So that's much easier to work with, and playing off of the other ideas, I think that would help make it more sophisticated. Instead of having a straight mirror reflection, that creates more patterns and it's more subtle. So that could help with the interaction. And another idea to, instead of just focusing on you, maybe that could be one part of the concept, and another part coming into play with us or we, taking a step further, maybe repeating the arches so there's multiple spots, and then just expanding it a little further to create more interaction, because you're playing with a lot of space. So there's more opportunities for a lot of people to interact with than that, instead of focusing on one individual. And I think I saw that you're in first year, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I applaud you for taking on such a big project on your own in first year. You're really doing a great job with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I would have imagined that a first year thing. But like to come on to do an installation to be a first year thing, so good job.
Rebecca, I was just going to say, going off of what Swetha just said, that you can achieve like a mirrored effect if a mirror is technically too hard for whatever fabrication installation needs. You can use polished chrome, like a number 8 polished chrome finish is very mirror-like. And so if you're trying to bend it or do anything that may not be technically possible, that's another option that came to mind. I had used it in a project and it served the purpose quite well. So just a thought.
Thank you.
I think you should take it as a compliment that your idea provoked so many other ideas and other thoughts. So it's you should take it as a compliment to you being bold and optimistic and positive.
Yes, thank you.
So next up we have 2D group 2, M&M. All presenters from this group, please turn on your videos if you haven't already done so, and good luck.
Hi everyone, my name is Margarita, we can just call me Rita, and my partner's name is Minju or Rebecca. We're M&M, and our theme is 2D new narratives.
Yep, so we started with generating some keywords to inform our design process. So what has been making our design industry change? To this question, we answered the development of technology, and sustainability of that development is another subtopic that goes under the technology. And with our installation, we're going to question how has technology changed the design industry and how the older designs might have looked like if they have the technology that we have today.
And so for our inspiration slash overall feel, this is kind of the style we want to use. It will be like 2D graphic collages with partial animations. We want to combine this graphic-like style that you see on the left with paper, old-like feel throughout the installation to really join the two times together and emphasize the evolution of one into another. And the first one here is just an animation by this artist, Shakura Graphics. As you can see, it's just like a partial animation of a little interaction. And then, oh, sorry. And then the second one is also a lot of GIFs by this artist, Kyle Fellow, I'm not sure. But we find them really interactive and really fun. And with a combination of this collaging style on the right and like the combination of old and new graphic styles, it would really emphasize the feel of our, the point and the feel of our installation. And then for the precedents, so the first images you see on the top are the precedents for what we really see as the new narrative for something old. Here you can see a new interpretation of well-known paintings in the way that matches the today's world, the digitalized world. And this new interpretation really highlights the technology and the ways we live in right now.
Yep, and the bottom images are the buildings as an example of merging the old and the new times and styles. While these are existing architecture, we want to focus more on the proposing a new narrative on the old designs, imagining what it might have looked like if they have the technology like we have today.
And as for our concept, I will just read it. Technology has played a huge role in the design industry development today. If we look at the overall history of the design industry, it went from using manpower to using mostly machines and computers and technology. The pre-existing designs in architectural buildings could have looked differently if the designers, even in the past, had the technologies that we have today. So our installation is aiming to be informed by the classic old ways in art and design and look at them through the eyes of technologically advanced world and see how they would differentiate. And factors like sustainability, personality, tools, materials, and execution have entirely changed, and both times have their pros and cons in these areas, which we will be presenting through this installation. We will be taking something old and looking at it through the eyes of technology and proposing a new way of looking at it, a new digital narrative and perspective, emphasizing the message of reusing and recycling and developing a visual representation of the new way of looking at the designs in art in the past. And this experience of transition from old into new will be executed through a series of animated collages, like we mentioned, and images where one can really see a new way of looking at the existing or old ways and designs in a completely different way.
Okay, for what we imagine the installation to look like is somewhat of a website page that guides the viewer through our narrative in an animated interactive fashion. We would focus on certain themes within designs like tools, materials, execution, or final outcome, comparing and merging the old tools and the new, addressing the sustainability aspect, time considering, etc. And in the process of making these visuals, we are planning to purchase a program called Visme, which is a program to make any kinds of graphic designs, including animated GIFs. And these images are what they would briefly look like in partially animated collages, where, for example, as you can see on the slide, paper crumbles becoming into a tablet, an old floor plan being drafted in a time lapse in computer screen, old machines merging into 3D printers, and maybe for the materials, or like some old bricks turning into urban materials like glass or steel, etc.
And as for the execution / final outcome, we will be looking at how the old buildings might have looked like if they had the technology we have today. And we would look at how the structures and designs were built and how they might have, looked different if they had the nowadays technology. I already said that. And the visuals would be kind of animated collages and emphasizing the transition between the old and the new, and kind of proposing this new way, the new design that it would have looked like the older building could have maybe be more like angular and etc.
And this is our rough schedule from December to May that we'll be following for this installation.
Just have some rough ideas of where we will meet and how we will approach this. And then for the budget.
And for the budget, as we mentioned before, we're planning to purchase a program called Visme, which is in total of $180. And with the rest of the money, $70, we're planning to purchase good quality images / vector graphics, but if we don't need them, we're not planning to use that money.
Yeah, this is just a quick video of showing what Visme can do. It can pretty much animate anything, and we thought it could be a really nice addition to just static 2D images to really make it interactive and fun and kind of interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind keep watching that video a little bit more. If you want to just play it in the background, it's pretty cool.
Oh,
sorry.
Let's keep it. Do you want the sound on?
Customize virtually anything. Edit, crop, or frame your images. Apply your own color schemes to icons, and much more. Translate boring data into beautiful and easy to understand visuals. Create professional charts and graphs, and tap into our one-of-a-kind data widgets to visualize stats and figures. You can even create interactive maps with your own geographical data. But one go beyond.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening.
Maybe some questions here. So it's this is good. Because when I enter the class, I'm looking for the bridges between different time zones. Like your generation is a different time zone, and my generation is a different time zone. So I like the merging of the absolutely, and this really shows how, and it was always done, am I right? That the one style was evolving, or not quite harmoniously evolving into different style. So this is like a conceptual, great, but what will be the installation? It's like how many examples? It will be like a wall plastered with the various images, or you have is like a digital presentation, or is actually prints?
Yeah, so because we're a 2D presentation, it's not that we're building something like a 3D model or something. It's kind of like a 2D experience, I would say. So we're imagining maybe a landing page, like a website page where you scroll through and there's all these narrated in proper order, collages, images. It had to be 2D. So we weren't allowed to like make a 3D space or a model or anything because it's supposed to be more like a graphical 2D experience. So.
But maybe what might be interesting that you have because this one is a potential for the like at one point sort of a strange publication album, right? Yeah. When you have like in the future, but maybe for this purpose you can have like a pamphlet which one can take with them with the, let's say 12 images, am I right? 12 apostles, I have no idea, 12 images, but actually on the wall, your installation will be a singular image where you see the singular object, whatever building or part of the city, and you will see slowly, digitally, how this, the old is merging and changing into the newer one. So we'll see the process. So you have a one large screen, and on this large screen you have a still 2D transformation. Because right now you're just merging, am I right? Like asking for the vanilla and chocolate, ice cream, am I right? Just together. So they're just going like this, but it would be very nice to see the actual transition from the old to the new one. And this will be the singular image, and then it will be this little accompanying little gift you'll be selling for hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, well, we're thinking, so yeah, it's kind of like the animating the 2D static collages would be like that aspect of transition, and I thought like that's kind of merging the two together very well. And just, am I mistaken? So the installation is not going to be in person, so we can't really do like pamphlets or anything. It's supposed to be all online, right?
Right, that's very true. That's very true.
So
yes,
that's why we're like
yeah.
didn't plan for anything.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
Physical,
that's very true. That's very true.
It's also like
online.
It's
very true. I just thought that the singular image has almost more impact. Singular, more complex image has almost more impact than 12 simplistic ones.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it could be like a really large, like interactive, basic like collage with a bunch of stuff in it that's like animated and just like a big landing page also. Yeah, I agree. Personally. Rebecca, sorry, Claire, what do you think?
I think Adam's idea is like really interesting. We were actually thinking something like that, but yeah, we chose this idea, so maybe we can like combine those together with our idea. That'll be really interesting.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
And the note I wanted to bring up was for what you had proposed with the 12 different images, or how are you connecting those pieces? Like what buildings from the old would you be choosing, and is there a common theme with all of that?
Not specifically. We haven't like picked specific sites. We were just mostly presenting like or thinking about and developing like the conceptual part of it, but that's definitely a next step, which we're gonna decide and really and make sure that it all kind of runs under the same theme and the same narrative, but yeah, so we have not thought of specifics yet. But thanks.
I guess I can go next. Now, forgive me, I'm not really familiar with the piece of software that you plan on using, but from the little that you've shown us, it seems like it's quite illustrative, and it sort of sidesteps the realistic renders in your initial precedents. So in my mind, I'm just trying to envision and merge these two together. So the beautiful pieces of architecture and the stunning details and, all of the richness that we get from current images of architecture, or even, antiquated photographs or sketches. I'm just trying to understand how the software you'll be using will be able to translate this like larger vision that you have, and create, an end product, whatever that might be, as you said, the landing page for a website, or however else you sort of translate it. If you could just speak to a bit of that.
Claire, I believe you mentioned that the program also can animate images like PNGs or JPEGs. Like you can just maybe take like a part of it, like photo, like crop it out and like animate that certain part. So I'm pretty sure that those two styles can be combined within that software.
Okay, Okay.
It's not,
And
not just vectors. I'm sure you can use. Where I'm right, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
You sure? I'm pretty sure you can, because you can upload. I think I saw in the video you can upload images. So I'm assuming that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then the last thing I would say is, of course, I really liked what Adam said. I like sort of the journey. I like the sort of transition, because the words I wrote down was, it'd be cool to have the process of the old to new. So you're sort of fading into something and you're taking the viewer on this journey, sort of like in, back in time. And so what I said is, if for some reason you didn't want to do that, to show all of those iterative, snapshots within history, even doing something in this snazzy software where it's almost like a ghost-like overlay on the present. So a viewer, if they're looking at 1 or even 12 static images, there's somehow there's this ghost-like overlay where the viewer can sort of see a glimpse into the past that might be quite compelling. And it would mean that the viewers, wherever they're looking at, whether it's a website or a physical installation, they would be sitting and you'd almost have to tease away what you're looking at. It's sort of like a little exercise for the viewers to understand current versus the past. You're sort of melding them together if you don't actually show the iterative journey through history. Yes, thanks.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's great. I think I kind of imagined something like that at some point, but we just kind of kept flowing right back and forth.
So, a couple of questions actually. Are you looking to come at it more from how has the design kind of workflow or process evolved over time, or are you? Because at one point during your presentation, I was thinking, okay, what could this is what I grasped, is what would design have, or certain designs have been, given that they had technology that we have today. And then there's another part that says, okay, how has the process of design itself evolved using technology? So in my head, I feel like that's kind of two separate topics almost, because if you go down the route of, let's say, any kind of famous building, the Sagrada Familia. I mean, Sagrada Familia, is already, I would say it's futuristic, if anything. But how would that building look if Antonio Gaudi had, Rhino in 1800s? Is that what we're trying to explore, or are we saying how Antonio Gaudi would have worked and drafted, So to me, that kind of feels like two separate ideas. What?
I think it was kind of both. Like, we were focusing on, imagining what those architecture or other old designs would have looked like if they had the technology nowadays, but also touching upon some topics about the overall merge and change and the transition between old and new.
So,
I do see how it could be like two separate concepts, but yeah, we kind of thought both, kind of merging them.
So I think from an audience standpoint, going down the process route has kind of two bits. Is where to the outside audience, people not in the design world, it's always interesting to see how we do things. So that's kind of something that you would potentially, how you would engage a broader audience, is that they'd be curious to see how things are done. But I guess, even going down the other route to show what could have been is also equal fantasy and kind of awe-inspiring. I posted a link in the chat. It's an Instagram account that I follow, and it's probably one of my favorites, which kind of speaks to certain ideas that you're talking about, so it might be of inspiration. But
really good.
Yeah, definitely, from an animation standpoint, I feel like you allotted $70 to buying vectors and other graphics.
If we need to, we might not even spend the entire project, right? Like, we're mostly just purchasing the program, and the rest we can either create ourselves or find some, if we need good quality images from Adobe Stock or something.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say that might not be enough. I mean, yeah. So I kind of, yeah.
We'll We'll throw some extra cash from how far anything.
But no, definitely a cool idea. Always interesting to see what, you know, like Adam was saying, bridging different time zones could be, you know, it's like time travel. Take a laptop back to 1600s. So what's possible? You know, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that if I can add something to it, it's because you can either go with you can go very playful. It's like a collage of various styles. Yeah, so it's one aspect. But you can go actually quite deeper, and it can be almost like an educative tool when you say, okay, well, this is the Gothic cathedral, for example, Gothic cathedral, and then it's like the spire of the Notre Dame in Paris, am I right? When they're considering there will be a modern Jean Nouvel maybe designing it, or eventually they opted for the replica of the old one, but which was Viollet-le-Duc, which was already 19th century. The cathedrals they were building over the 600 years or 800 years, Cathedral of Köln. But I think that you can say, well, if this is my building, whatever the building is, you can either, because the examples which you gave, there was usually the clash, but very elegant clash of various styles. But you can say, okay, well, this is the Gothic cathedral done by the anonymous whoever, and then let's try to see how the Calatrava would develop this one. And another portion, how it will be done by the Liebeswurz, am I right? Total deconstruction of the Gothic cathedral. And actually, to be quite honest, if you have like a one image, which is one image which is just changing depending the time, but also the style of the personality, the creative personality, this can be used as a fantastic educational tool. We cannot, you know, because otherwise we are going through the very thick book, History of Art, and we are page 20, you need third coffee, am I right? Because it just you fall asleep. So it might be fantastic, purely visual, to get people interested. Oh, this is what the transformation is over the time. Oh, this is what's happening, and this is how important the individual creators are. So it might be actually quite interesting, but of course, it will cost you very little, except hundreds and hundreds of hours of your time. I don't think it's doable, but you know what? You can try. You are very fast, both of you. So
I hope. But yeah, no, that's also a great idea. Something to think about. Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely ambitious, but
Yeah.
ambition is good.
Reach for the stars and oh no, what is it? Reach for the moon and you'll end up in the stars, right?
Reach for the stars and you'll end up on the moon.
Or that. I think I heard both, but I think I heard both.
Don't quarrel with each other.
Sorry.
Okay. Just to kind of jump in a little bit too, because since we still have quite a bit of time, just how did you kind of decide to go with your style of graphics and like animation style?
Oh, that's easy. I just thought it could be looking quite boring if it was just like people like scrolling through images or like clicking through images or like looking at something. Like I think, I mean, even on a simple example on like Instagram, people are more likely to watch stories that are videos than pictures because people get really tired of like static images and reading things. So I think animating something could really bring in some mood and some kind of fun into it and more interaction and just kind of more character. If that makes sense. Claire, what did you think?
Yeah, I agree with. Yeah. You basically explained everything I want to say.
So also just like aside from the old to new narrative, is there something else you're going to be focusing on? Like I know when we met, we've talked about like talking about maybe energy consumption. Are you going to like focus your kind of graphics on like some sort of message otherwise, or is it just going to be the focus from old to new?
I was actually, yeah, I think we kind of forgot to mention it in our presentation. So yeah, we will be trying also using mostly or like representing the materials that are sustainable. So like if we're doing, using graphics or like using kind of like the new proposed part of the building would like not be using concrete because obviously it's sustainable, we'll be like proposing the sustainable materials in the graphics itself, just kind of, and also just the whole idea of reusing something old into something new is already kind of about sustainability and recycling and reusing, so that kind of message ties into it, in my opinion.
Just adding on to the points on graphics, I would still look into that a lot more, because I think like the vector like style that you guys have shown, like it's very illustrative, and it says it's very contrasting to what you're pulling from, but there's other graphic like collage styles that tie into photorealistic. So I think you really need to focus on like find your theme and then decide if you want it to be more merging or very, very much contrasting. That kind of graphic style, even if it's a new graphic style, there's still a lot of different options, but you really just have to decide on a theme first and then make sure that fits into it.
Thank you. Well.
And I guess kind of just suggestions / comments. I think that I think if there is kind of like you explore this kind of telling a story through these collages, and it's not just one collage but several collages, and kind of just maybe having one character throughout all of the collages that shows up in all of these collages, and then people would say, oh, I've seen this character before, and kind of just figuring out a story through these, or merging two, I guess, worlds, basically, or merging two worlds. Telling a story through that would be a really nice thing to explore.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, it would be kind of like a narrative of that little character.
Yeah.
This new narrative, yeah.
Yeah, literally telling a story. And then one more suggestion is not to really, I guess, constrain yourself using one app. I think exploring multiple apps like Photoshop. Because, yeah, would be, I think,
that's like the good purchasing. Like we would have those, but yeah, or
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, great work. Looking good.
There's something that just came to mind that I thought I'd share. Since, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said this would be potentially a landing page for a website or something like that. I think I'm always trying to, well, specifically the nature of the category that you're in, the 2D narratives. What if this website is launched on day X or something, but the image evolves and reveals more and more over, it's almost like you have like an installation in a gallery or a museum, and the gallery or, the installation's up for 10 days or something. What if, rather than it being like an immediate experience where someone, is on their phone or on their tablet or something, and they view this landing page and they gather all the information in 10 seconds, 30 seconds, however long, how much, it depends on how you can capture them and capture their attention. But what if you're slowly revealing more and more about this narrative and the story that you're trying to share? So what if this landing page evolves and, say, tying in what Adam said, if you are showing, initially said, if you are showing this process, what if the image like gradually evolves and it keeps bringing the viewers back to the same website, to the same landing page, to slowly reveal more and more, that culminates in your final vision, that perfectly frames your final story and your final concept, but it pulls them in over and over again, rather than the immediate click consumption that is sort of natural within Instagram. The reason why so much is posted on Instagram, because you can consume it so quickly. So what in your translation of this and in your communication of this sidesteps that and sort of pulls people in kind of over and over? So I think that kind of reveal slowly sort of, an image kind of appearing over time and then revealing the final thing might be a sort of lovely, compelling way to draw in an audience and keep them captivated.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the insight.
I think it's a good idea, Sonali, that it means that we are showing the passage of time using time. It takes time to show and digest the passage of time. I just watched recently the video. In Costa Rica, they're building the prototype of the wooden cargo ship. It takes them, I don't know, it's probably the second year or something like this. And they are doing every few months, they are just creating a new video about this one. And those people are working there. Nothing is speed up. It's the actual speed of the building this ridiculous, but amazing, you know, wooden ship. So, you know, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our panelists and presenters. This concludes our presentation. Now we will wait for our main hosts to regroup us back into the main room for closing remarks.
Cool. Well, if I don't get to say this again, I wish you all best of luck.
Yeah, great job, guys.